abandoned without a name and with her brothers, until a farmer appears and gives her everything she dreamed of. The girl woke up to the sound of an engine fading away. Her eyes opened slowly, still heavy from the forced sleep the medication had caused. Beside her, her two younger brothers slept deeply by the side of the dirt road, protected only by a thin blanket she had managed to hold onto during the chaos. There was no one else around. The blue minivan that had brought them there was gone, leaving only a cloud of red dust in the hot afternoon air. The girl sat up quickly, her heart racing as the reality hit her like a punch to the gut. They had been abandoned in the middle of nowhere, without any papers, without any documents to prove who they were. "Tyler, Ethan, wake up," she whispered, shaking the boy's shoulders gently. Tyler, the older of the two at 10 years old, opened his eyes first. His confused expression quickly turned to panic when he realized where they were. "Where's Aunt Brenda?" he asked, his voice still hoarse from sleep. The girl didn't know how to answer. How could she explain to a child that the woman who claimed to care for them had left them there on purpose? How could she tell them they had nowhere to go? Ethan, just 8 years old, began to cry softly when he sensed something was wrong. The girl pulled him close, trying to stay strong for both of them, even as her own tears threatened to spill. "We'll be okay," she lied, running her hand through her younger brother's dirty hair. "Someone will find us." But deep in her 12-year-old heart, she knew things wouldn't be that simple. They didn't even know their real names. Aunt Brenda had always called them by nicknames, and whenever they asked about their parents or their past, she would change the subject or get angry. The sun was beginning to set when they heard the sound of an engine approaching. The girl stood quickly, stepping in front of her brothers. Her past experiences had taught her to be wary of strangers. An old pickup truck stopped a few feet away. A man in a straw hat climbed out, moving slowly so as not to scare the children. He wore a faded plaid shirt and jeans covered in dirt, his boots crunching on the dry ground. "Hey there, kids," he said in a calm voice, crouching at a distance. "Are you lost?" The girl studied him carefully. He seemed different from the other adults she'd met. His eyes were kind, and there was none of the nervous hurry people usually had when they saw them. "We're waiting for someone," she answered, her voice steadier than she felt inside. The man nodded, not pushing. He noticed the children's dirty clothes, their frightened looks, the way the girl shielded her brothers. "My name's Robert William, but you can call me Mr. Rob. I've got a farm nearby. Are you hungry?" Ethan shifted behind his sister, clearly interested in the offer of food. They hadn't eaten properly in 2 days, surviving only on the crackers the girl had hidden in her backpack. "We don't need your help," she said, but her stomach growled loudly, betraying her words. Mr. Rob smiled gently. "How about you come to my house just to get something to eat? After that, if you want, I can bring you back here." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The girl looked at her brothers. Tyler was visibly exhausted, and Ethan could barely stand. She knew they had no choice, but she still hesitated. What if this man was like the others? What if he tried to separate them? "We promise we won't do anything bad," Tyler suddenly said. "We're just really hungry." Robert nodded solemnly to the boy. "I promise you'll stay together, always." Something in the way he said those words made the girl believe him. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was the first time someone truly seemed to care about how they felt. "Okay," she murmured, "but just to eat." Robert's farm was a 15-minute drive down the dirt road in his old pickup truck. It was a simple place, with a white-painted wooden house and a large yard where chickens roamed freely. It smelled of damp earth and flowers, so different from the places they'd lived before. "My wife, Mrs. Margaret, is probably making dinner," Robert said, stopping the vehicle in front of the house. A woman with graying hair appeared on the porch, drying her hands on a dish towel. When she saw the children, her expression softened immediately. "Good heavens, Robert, who are these children?" "I found them on the road," the farmer explained. "They're hungry." Margaret hurried down the porch steps, crouching to the children's height just as her husband had done. "You must be exhausted. Come inside, I'll draw you a warm bath and make some good food." The girl was still tense, but the woman's genuine kindness was hard to resist. When was the last time anyone had cared whether they were clean or well-fed? Dinner was a revelation. Margaret had made rice, beans, roast chicken, and a salad with tomatoes from the garden. The children ate quietly, still cautious but clearly savoring every bite. "Do you have family around here?" Margaret asked gently, serving more rice to Ethan. The girl stopped chewing. It was the question she dreaded, but she knew she couldn't avoid it forever. "We lived with our aunt," she finally said, "but she left. And your parents?" "I don't remember them," she admitted, lowering her eyes. "Aunt Brenda said they went traveling when I was little." Robert and Margaret exchanged a meaningful glance. They'd seen many difficult situations over the years, but something about these children touched their hearts deeply. "You can stay here tonight," Robert offered. "Tomorrow we can talk about what to do." For the first time in days, the girl felt real relief. Maybe, just maybe, they were safe for one night. Margaret set up mattresses in the living room with clean sheets and soft pillows. The children lay down together, as they always did when they were scared. "Do you think they'll try to separate us?" Tyler whispered in the dark. The girl looked out the window, watching the stars shine in the clear country sky. "I don't know, but if they try, we'll run away again. What if we can't get away this time?" That question echoed in the girl's mind for hours, keeping her awake. She'd promised her siblings she'd always protect them. But what if she wasn't strong enough? What if this place that seemed so good was just another illusion? The next morning, Robert woke early to tend to the animals. He found the girl sitting on the porch, watching the sunrise. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Not much," she admitted. "I'm used to keeping watch." Keeping watch? To protect my brothers. You never know when someone might try to do something bad. Robert's heart ached. A 12-year-old shouldn't have to worry about such things. "Here, you don't need to worry about that," he said gently. "Mrs. Margaret and I will take care of you." The girl looked at him skeptically. "Everyone says that at first. And then? Then they change their minds. Or they try to separate us because they say it's better that way." Robert was silent for a moment, taking in her words. "Have you been separated before?" "Once. They put Ethan with one family, and me and Tyler with another." Your voice got quieter. "He cried so much he got sick. I managed to run away and get him, but it was awful." "And Aunt Brenda?" "She wasn't really our aunt. She was someone the social worker knew, who said she could take care of us for a while." The pieces began falling into place in Robert's mind. These children had gone through the foster system and somehow ended up with someone who shouldn't have been caring for them. "Do you know your real names?" The girl shook her head. "Aunt Brenda always called us Beth, Ty, and Eth. She said our real names were on the papers, but she never showed us the papers." Robert took a deep breath. The situation was more complicated than he'd imagined. How could he help children who didn't even officially know who they were? Margaret appeared on the porch with a breakfast tray. "Good morning, sweetheart. Are your brothers still asleep?" "Yes, Mom. They always sleep more when they feel safe." The girl's words touched the couple deeply. Over breakfast, they talked about the situation, trying to understand what had happened. "Aunt Brenda said she was taking us to a better place," the girl explained, accepting a second slice of cornbread. "But in the car, she kept talking on the phone about money. She said she couldn't take care of us anymore because she wasn't getting enough. And she just left you on the side of the road like that with nothing. She said we'd like the new place, that it was in the country, gave us some medicine to sleep during the trip. When I woke up, she was already gone." Robert felt anger rising inside him. How could someone do this to defenseless children? "Would you like to stay here a few more days?" Margaret offered. "Until we figure out what to do." The girl hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but her experience had taught her to be cautious. "What if you change your minds?" "We won't," Robert promised. "But I understand why you're scared." Just then, Tyler and Ethan appeared at the kitchen door, their hair still messy from sleep. "Can I feed the chickens?" Ethan asked, excited by the novelty. Robert smiled. "Of course you can. How about I teach you all how to take care of the animals?" The next few days passed like a dream. The children helped with farm chores, played in the yard, and for the first time in a long while they seemed truly relaxed. The girl, however, remained watchful, expecting things to change at any moment. It was on a Wednesday afternoon that her fears came true. An official car pulled up in front of the house, and a woman in a suit stepped out with a folder in hand. "Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Wilson from County Social Services. We received a report about missing children." The girl's stomach dropped. She knew this moment would come, but she wasn't ready to face it so soon. Robert and Margaret welcomed the social worker into the living room while the children hid behind the kitchen door trying to listen. "The children are fine, but we need to sort out their situation," Jennifer explained. "We have no records of where they were living or who was responsible for them." "They were abandoned," Robert said firmly. "I found them on the side of the road all alone. I understand. But unfortunately, without proper documentation, I have to take the children to a temporary shelter while we investigate the case." "No!" The girl rushed out from behind the door, running into the living room. "We're not going to any shelter." Tyler and Ethan appeared right behind her, clearly frightened. "Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but it's the proper procedure," Jennifer said professionally. "You'll be in a safe place while we look for your family." "We don't have a family," the girl shouted, "and shelters split up siblings. I won't let this happen." Margaret stood up quickly, placing her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Calm down, sweetheart. Let's talk about this." "Is there any way the children can stay here while you sort things out?" asked Robert. Jennifer shook her head. "Unfortunately, you're not a qualified foster family. The process takes months, and these children need immediate care." The girl felt her world crumbling around her. Once again, just when she had finally found a place where she felt safe, everything was about to be taken away. "I need time to explain this to them," Margaret pleaded, noticing the panic in the children's eyes. "Of course, I'll come back tomorrow morning to pick them up." After Jennifer left, the house fell into a heavy silence. The children clung to each other on the couch while Robert and Margaret tried to process what had just happened. "We can't let this happen," Margaret said to her husband. "These children have already suffered too much. But what can we do? The law is clear." The girl listened to the conversation and felt a cold determination growing inside her. She wouldn't let her siblings be taken to a shelter. She wouldn't let them be separated again. That night, while everyone slept, she quietly woke Tyler and Ethan. "We have to leave," she whispered. "But I like it here," Ethan whimpered. "Me too. But if we stay, they'll separate us tomorrow. Would you rather run away with me or be taken somewhere I can't protect you?" Tyler understood the gravity of the situation. "Where are we going?" "I don't know, but we have to try." The children gathered their few belongings and slipped out quietly through the back door. The girl had observed the farm's routine and knew Robert only woke at dawn to milk the cows. They walked down the dirt road in the dark, guided only by the full moon. She didn't have a specific plan, just the certainty that they needed to get away before the social worker returned. But what she didn't expect was for Robert to wake up in the middle of the night to check on the animals. When he saw the children weren't in the living room, his heart raced. "Margaret, the children ran away." The couple dressed quickly and set out in the old pickup truck to search for them. It wasn't hard to spot them on the road. 3 small figures walking slowly under the moonlight. "Girls, boys!" Robert called, stopping the truck. The children froze at the sound of his voice. The girl instinctively pushed her siblings behind her. "We're not going back," she shouted. "You're just going to hand us over to that woman." Robert stepped out of the truck with his hands raised. "No one's handing you over to anyone." "You lied. You said we'd always stay together." "And you will," Margaret said, also stepping out of the truck. "But running away isn't the answer." "Then what is?" the girl asked, tears streaming down her face. "Everyone always says they'll take care of us, but in the end, we're just a problem. Nobody really wants." Robert crouched on the road, keeping his distance so as not to scare them. "Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Mrs. Margaret and I have been married for 25 years. We tried for a long time to have children, but never could. When you came into our lives, it was like God answered our prayers. But the law can be changed. There are ways to do this right, but it takes time. Time you'll spend here with us, not in some shelter." Ethan stepped out from behind his sister. "How?" Margaret moved closer slowly. Mr. Robb knows the county judge. They studied together when they were young. Tomorrow, before the social worker arrives, we'll talk to him, explain the situation, and ask if you can stay here temporarily while we sort out the paperwork. The girl was still suspicious. And if it doesn't work? If it doesn't work, we'll try another way. And another. And another. Until it does, Robert promised. Because you're our children now, understand? And parents don't give up on their kids. For the first time since she could remember, the girl felt something like hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to carry the weight alone. Do you promise you won't separate us? We promise, Robert and Margaret said in unison. The children went back home, but no one could sleep. They spent the rest of the night talking about what to do when the social worker arrived. Robert called the judge early in the morning, explaining the situation. Judge Thompson, who had known Robert for decades, agreed to meet them before the courthouse's usual hours. The children can stay with you temporarily, the judge decided after hearing the whole story. But you need to start the foster care process immediately. How long does it take? Normally a few months. But given these children's specific situation and the fact you already have an established relationship, I can speed up some steps. When Jennifer arrived at the farm that morning, she found Robert and Margaret with temporary official paperwork. This is highly irregular, the social worker protested. But it's legal, Robert replied calmly. The judge signed it yesterday. Jennifer studied the documents carefully. They were correct, but she clearly wasn't happy. I'll need to make weekly visits to monitor the children's progress, she finally said. Of course, whatever's necessary. The following weeks were an emotional roller coaster. During the day, the children helped on the farm and seemed truly happy. But Jennifer's weekly visits created constant tension in the house. The social worker seemed determined to find problems. She criticized everything, from how the children were disciplined to the teaching methods Margaret used for homeschooling. The children need to be enrolled in a regular school, she said during one visit. The nearest school is 25 miles from here, Robert explained, and they're learning just fine at home. That's not adequate for their social development. The girl, who had started to feel safe, grew anxious again. She noticed Jennifer always found something to criticize and feared it would be used as an excuse to separate them. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Things got worse when Jennifer discovered the children had no valid birth certificates. Aunt Brenda had vanished completely, and there were no official records of the children's identities. This complicates the foster process a lot, the lawyer Robert had hired explained. Without documentation, technically, these children don't exist in the system. What does that mean? It means it could take years to resolve legally. And during that time, social services could argue you have no legal right to care for them. Robert's heart sank. After weeks of hope, it seemed everything was crumbling again. The girl noticed the change in the adult's behavior. She overheard whispered conversations late at night, saw the worry in Margaret's eyes, noticed how Robert grew quiet during work. Are you going to send us back? She asked bluntly at dinner. Robert nearly choked on his food. What? Of course not. But you're different, worried, like the others were before they sent us away. Margaret held the girl's hand. Sweetheart, we are worried, yes, but not because we want to get rid of you. We're worried because we don't want anyone to take you away from us. The document situation is complicated, Robert explained honestly, but we'll sort it out. It might take time, but we'll sort it out. What if you can't? We will, Margaret said firmly, because you're our children now, and we don't give up on our family. But the problems kept piling up. Jennifer started filing negative reports about the situation, claiming the children were being harmed by living in an isolated rural environment. They need access to specialized psychologists, she argued. Children who've experienced trauma need professional support. Robert tried to counter her arguments, but he knew she had valid points. The kids did need professional help, but the services available in the area were limited. Things came to a head when Jennifer brought in a psychologist to evaluate the children. Dr. Amanda arrived with a professional and distant demeanor that immediately made the kids uncomfortable. "I'll need to speak with each of you individually," she announced. The girl knew this was a common tactic, separating siblings to see if their stories matched, looking for inconsistencies that could be used against them. During her private session, Dr. Amanda asked invasive questions about the children's past, how they felt on the farm, their fears and anxieties. "Do you feel responsible for taking care of your brothers?" the psychologist asked. "I always have," the girl answered cautiously. "But now you have adults who can take care of you. You don't have to carry that burden anymore." "I know. But what if they change their minds?" "Why do you think they would?" The girl fell silent. How could she explain to a stranger all the years of disappointment, all the broken promises, all the pain of being constantly rejected? "Everyone always changes their mind," she finally said. Dr. Amanda wrote something on her clipboard. "And do you trust Mr. Rob and Mrs. Margaret?" "I'm trying, but you're still afraid." "I'm afraid of everything." After the evaluations, Dr. Amanda met privately with Jennifer. The girl managed to overhear part of their conversation through the kitchen window. "The oldest child shows clear signs of anxiety and hypervigilance," the psychologist said. "She takes on adult responsibilities and struggles to trust authority figures." "Is that harmful to her development?" "It can be. She needs to learn how to be a child again, and that might be easier in a structured environment with other kids going through similar situations." The girl's heart turned to ice. They were talking about separating her from her brothers again, claiming it would be better for her. That night, she told Robert and Margaret what she'd heard. "They're trying to convince me I'd be better off away from Tyler and Ethan," she said, fighting back tears. Robert felt a cold anger. "No one's going to separate you, I promise." "But what if they get a court order?" "Then we'll appeal. And appeal again. And again." "What if that doesn't work?" Robert and Margaret exchanged glances. They'd discussed this possibility in private, but never in front of the kids. "If we have to, we'll leave," Margaret finally said. "We'll go to another state, we'll change our names, we'll do whatever it takes to keep our family together." The girl looked at them in surprise. "You'd do that, even knowing it could cause trouble for you?" "Honey," Robert said, kneeling in front of her, "when you truly love someone, you do whatever it takes to protect them. And we love you three more than anything in this world." For the first time, the girl began to believe that maybe, finally, she had found people who truly cared about her and her siblings. But the challenges were far from over. The following week, Jennifer arrived with devastating news. "We've found a qualified family interested in adopting Ethan," she announced. "They're experienced. They've adopted before. They think a younger child would adjust better." "No!" the girl shouted. "You promised you wouldn't separate us." "This decision isn't up to me," Jennifer said. "It's what's best for the child." "How can splitting up siblings be best?" Robert protested. "Ethan is the youngest. He has a better chance of adapting to a new family if he isn't tied to the shared trauma with his older siblings." The girl felt like she'd been punched in the gut. This was exactly what had happened before. They always took Ethan first because he was younger and easier to handle. "When?" Margaret asked, her voice barely audible. "The family wants to meet Ethan next week. If the introduction goes well, the transfer could happen quickly." After Jennifer left, the house fell into complete silence. Ethan didn't fully understand what was happening, but Tyler and the girl knew exactly what it meant. "We're not letting this happen," the girl said firmly. "Not again." "But what can we do?" Tyler asked, tears starting to fall. "I don't know yet, but we'll do something." Robert spent the whole night on the phone, talking to the lawyer, the judge, trying to find any legal loophole to stop the separation. "The situation is complicated," the lawyer explained. "Without official documentation, you don't have recognized parental rights. And County Social Services has the authority to make decisions in the child's best interest. But this is clearly not in his best interest. He'll be traumatized if he's taken from his siblings." "I agree, but I need more time to build a strong case, and time is exactly what we don't have." The week passed like a nightmare. Ethan sensed something was wrong and clung to his older sister constantly. Tyler barely ate, and the girl didn't sleep a single night. On the day Ethan was supposed to meet the prospective family, the children hid in the barn on the farm. "I won't let them take you," the girl promised, hugging Ethan tightly. "Never." Jennifer arrived with the couple, a man and woman in their 40s, well-dressed and wearing professional smiles. "Where are the children?" Jennifer asked when she found only Robert and Margaret in the house. "I don't know," Robert lied. "They must be playing outside." "Mr. Rob, please don't make this harder than it already is." "Hard? You're tearing a family apart." The couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. They'd been told this would be a smooth transition. "Maybe we should come back another day," the woman suggested. "No," Jennifer said firmly. "We need to settle this today." She went to search for the children, eventually finding them in the barn. Ethan was tucked between the girl and Tyler, all of them huddled together and trembling. "Ethan, come meet Mr. Michael and Mrs. Karen. They want to be your new parents." "I already have siblings," Ethan replied, his voice small but firm. "I don't want new parents." "Sweetheart, you need to understand, this is for your own good." "If it's for his own good, why is he crying?" the girl interrupted. "Why are we all crying?" Jennifer sighed impatiently. "You're too young to understand the complexities of the situation." "I understand perfectly," the girl said, standing up. "You want to split up our family because it's easier for you, easier to find homes for one child than for three. It's easier to process individual paperwork than to keep siblings together." "That's not it." "Yes, it is. And you know it's wrong. That's why you make up excuses about best interest and healthy development." Michael and Karen watched the scene with growing discomfort. They truly wanted to help a child, but seeing the siblings suffering, they began to question if they were doing the right thing. "Jennifer," Karen said hesitantly, "maybe we should reconsider. The child is clearly distressed. Children are always distressed at first. It's normal. With time, he'll adjust." "He won't adjust," said Tyler, speaking for the first time. "I remember last time. Ethan got sick from crying so much. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The doctors said it was stress." Michael looked at his wife. "Maybe the kids are right. Maybe this isn't the right thing to do." Jennifer was visibly frustrated. "You don't understand the full situation. These children need stability, and Mr. Rob and Mrs. Margaret can't officially provide that." "But they can give us love," said the girl, "and they'll never separate us." It was then that Robert appeared in the barn, carrying a folder full of papers. "Actually," he said, a smile beginning to form on his face, "I think we can offer official stability too." He opened the folder and showed the documents to Jennifer. "We spent the whole week working on this. The judge issued an extended temporary custody order, and we found a legal precedent for cases involving undocumented children." Jennifer examined the papers carefully, her expression gradually changing. "How did you manage this?" The lawyer found a similar case in another state, abandoned children without documentation who were adopted after a special identity recognition process. "This will take months." "Yes, but during those months, the kids stay with us, legally, without outside interference." Jennifer knew she had lost this battle. The documents were correct and signed by the judge. "This doesn't solve the fundamental problem," she said. "These children still need specialized psychological support." "And they'll get it," said Margaret, appearing behind her husband. "We hired a private psychologist who comes here twice a week, and we enrolled them in the school in the neighboring town." "How will you handle transportation?" "I'll drive them back and forth every day," said Robert. 80 miles a day is nothing to make sure my kids get a good education." Michael and Karen decided to leave, understanding their presence was no longer needed. They wished the family luck and promised to consider other ways to help children in need. Jennifer stayed another hour, reviewing all the paperwork and making new demands. But in the end, she had no choice but to accept the situation. "I'll continue making monthly visits," she warned before leaving. "And if there's any problem, any sign the children aren't getting proper care, I'll take immediate action." "Understood," said Robert calmly. "Come whenever you want. We have nothing to hide." After Jennifer left, The family finally breathed a sigh of relief, but the girl was still tense. What if she finds something? What if she makes trouble? Then we'll face it when it comes, said Margaret. But for now, you're safe, and we'll do everything right to keep it that way. The following months were a time of intense adjustment. The children started attending school, which was a considerable challenge. They were behind academically and struggled socially due to years of instability. The girl, in particular, had trouble trusting teachers and connecting with other kids. She was used to being responsible for her siblings and didn't know how to just be a student. It's hard to let other adults take care of Tyler and Ethan. She confessed to Dr. Rebecca, the psychologist Robert William and Margaret had hired. You carried that responsibility for a long time. It's only natural that it's hard to let go. But what if something happens when I'm not around? Robert William and Margaret are responsible adults. They know how to take care of children. I know they do, but it's hard to explain. It's like it's my duty to protect them. Dr. Rebecca nodded understandingly. You developed a survival behavior pattern. Now you need to learn to relax that pattern. The psychological work was long and sometimes painful. The girl had to relive many traumatic memories, learning to process emotions she had suppressed for years. Tyler also had his own struggles. He developed separation anxiety and would panic whenever he couldn't see his older sister. Ethan, being the youngest, adjusted more quickly to the new life, but he also had frequent nightmares and unexplained fears. The process of sorting out their documentation was extremely complicated. The lawyer had to prove the children were truly siblings, establish their approximate ages based on medical exams, and create official documents from scratch. This is a groundbreaking process, the lawyer explained. If we succeed, it could set a precedent for other similar cases. During this time, the family faced many practical challenges. The children's education required special attention. They needed constant tutoring to make up for lost years. Robert worked double shifts to cover the extra expenses: therapy, schooling, clothes, school supplies. Margaret stopped selling her baked goods in town to have more time for the kids. Sometimes I feel guilty, the girl said one evening. You're spending so much money on us, working so hard. Sweetheart, Margaret interrupted, that's exactly what parents do. They work, sacrifice, and invest in their children, because love is priceless. But what if it doesn't work out? What if in the end you waste money and time for nothing? Robert sat beside her on the couch. Listen, honey, there's no such thing as for nothing when it comes to family. Even if, for some reason, things didn't work out, and they will, all this time we've spent together has already been worth it. Slowly, the children began to believe they could really have a permanent family. Ethan was the first to call Robert William and Margaret Dad and Mum. Tyler took a few more months, but eventually followed his brother's lead. The girl was the last. She watched for weeks, testing to see if the adults were happy or bothered when the boys used those terms. One morning, she was helping Margaret in the kitchen when she let it slip. Mum, can I make breakfast by myself today? Margaret stopped stirring the eggs and looked at her. What did you say? The girl blushed, realizing what she'd said. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't know if I could. Of course you can, Margaret said, tears in her eyes. Of course you can call me Mom. They hugged tightly, and the girl finally let her tears fall. For years she had dreamed of having a real mother, someone who loved her unconditionally. Progress at school was gradual too. The girl discovered she had a talent for math and began helping classmates who struggled. Tyler excelled in PE and made friends on the soccer team. Ethan turned out to be a natural artist, always drawing and creating stories. Jennifer's visits continued, but with less frequency and hostility. She could clearly see the children were thriving in their new environment. I admit I was wrong, she told Robert William during one of her visits. You really know what you're doing. We're learning every day, Robert answered honestly. Being a father doesn't come with an instruction manual. How are things financially? Tight, but we make it work. Every penny is worth it. Jennifer nodded. She'd seen many foster families over the years, and few showed the genuine dedication that Robert and Margaret demonstrated. The adoption process should be finalized soon, she informed them. All the documents are in order, and the judge is satisfied with the reports. This news brought immense relief to the whole family. Finally, after more than a year of uncertainty, they would have legal security. But there was still one problem troubling the girl. She still didn't have a real name. Robert and Margaret had asked several times what name she'd like to have officially, but she couldn't decide. "Why is it so hard?" she asked Dr. Rebecca. "Maybe because choosing a name means fully accepting this new life. And part of you is still afraid of getting too attached." The psychologist was right. The girl had spent so long protecting herself emotionally that it was hard to let herself dream of a stable future. What if I choose a name and then things go wrong? What if you don't choose a name and miss the chance to have your own identity? The girl thought hard about this. One evening, she was stargazing from the porch when Robert joined her. "What's on your mind?" "My name. I don't know which one to pick." Robert stayed quiet for a moment. "When you were little, before coming to live with Aunt Brenda, do you remember anyone calling you by a special name?" The girl closed her eyes, reaching for very old memories. I think someone called me Hope. I don't know if it was my real name or just a nickname." "Hope," Robert repeated. "That's a beautiful name. It means having faith in the future, believing good things will happen." "Do you think it suits me?" "I think it suits you perfectly. You never lost hope, even when everything seemed impossible. You always believed you could protect your brothers and find a family." That night, the girl made her decision. Her name would be Hope. The day of the final adoption hearing arrived like a whirlwind of emotions. The whole family was nervous, even though they knew everything would work out. Judge Thompson smiled when he saw the children enter the room. "So today's the day you'll officially become a family?" "Yes, sir," Hope answered, her voice steady for the first time in a long while. "And are you sure you want to be adopted by Mr. Rob and Mrs. Margaret?" "Absolutely," the three children said in unison. The judge read the official documents, declaring that from that moment on, Hope, Tyler, and Ethan were the legal children of Robert William and Margaret Johnson. "Now you have full names, birth certificates, and all the rights of any U.S. citizen," the judge announced. "Congratulations, Johnson family." Margaret openly cried. Robert had to clear his throat several times to control his emotions. The children hugged, finally feeling completely safe. As they left the courthouse, Ethan asked, "Now no one can separate us, right?" "Never again," Robert promised. "You're our children forever." Adjusting to life as an official family was surprisingly smooth. The children already felt at home on the farm, and now they had the legal security they'd needed so badly. Hope discovered that without the constant pressure of protecting her brothers, she could finally be a normal teenager. She took an interest in photography and began documenting farm life. Tyler proved to be an excellent animal caretaker and expressed interest in studying veterinary medicine someday. Ethan continued developing his artistic talent and dreamed of becoming a children's book illustrator. The farm thrived with the children's energy. They helped Robert modernize some farming practices and Margaret expand her homemade sweets business. "You've brought new life to this place," Robert said one night during dinner. "And you've brought new life to us," Hope replied. The challenges didn't completely disappear. There were still tough moments, occasional nightmares, and unexplained anxieties. But now they faced these difficulties as a united family. Dr. Rebecca continued seeing the children, but with less frequent sessions. "Your progress is remarkable," she said. "Especially you, Hope. You've learned to be a child again without losing your inner strength." "I still get scared sometimes," Hope admitted, "and you always will. But now you have a solid foundation to face those fears." 2 years after the adoption, the Johnson family was unrecognizable from the one formed that first day on the road. The children had grown physically and emotionally. Robert and Margaret had discovered the joy of being parents, and the farm had become a true home. Hope, now 15, was a confident teenager, balancing school with work on the farm. She was still protective of her siblings, but in a healthy way. Tyler, at 13, was popular in school and had found his place as the family mediator. Ethan, 11, was the light of the house, always drawing and making everyone laugh. One afternoon, while organizing her photographs, Hope found a picture she had taken during their first year on the farm. Robert was teaching Ethan how to feed the chickens, while Tyler helped Margaret in the garden. Looking at the photo, she remembered that first morning when she woke up abandoned on the side of the road. It felt like a lifetime ago. "What are you thinking about?" Margaret asked, entering the room. "About how our lives have changed, how I've changed. You were always special, sweetheart. You just needed a chance to shine. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that we really have a family." Margaret sat beside her daughter. "You know what I've learned these years? Family isn't just about blood or official roles. It's about love, commitment, and choice. We choose each other every day. And you'll never get tired of us. Impossible. You're the best thing that's ever happened to us." That night at dinner, Robert made a special announcement. "I've been thinking about expanding the house. How would you all feel about having your own rooms?" The kids exchanged excited glances. They still shared the room that had been prepared initially, but the idea of having their own space was tempting. "But what if I have a nightmare?" Ethan asked. "Then you run to Hope's room like you always do," Tyler laughed. "Actually," Hope said, "I think I'll miss having you guys in my room." "We could do connecting doors," Robert suggested. "That way, you have privacy when you want it but can still be together when you need to." It was the perfect solution, typical of how the Johnson family solved every problem, with love, understanding, and creativity. The years passed quickly. Hope graduated high school as one of the top students in her class. She received a scholarship to study journalism at the State University. "I'll miss the farm," she said the night before leaving for college. "And we'll miss you," Robert replied. "But we're so proud of you." "The college is only 2 hours away," Margaret reminded her. "You can come home every weekend if you want." "I will. This will always be my home." Tyler had decided to follow in his father's footsteps and learn about sustainable farming. Ethan was still in high school, but had already won several regional art contests. The farm had become well known in the area, not just for the quality of its products, but for the Johnson family's story. Others began seeking out Robert and Margaret for advice about adoption and fostering. "You could help other children," Hope suggested during one of her college visits. "We've thought about it," Margaret admitted, "but the three of you keep us busy enough. Not for long. We'll be grown soon and you'll be alone on the farm." It was true. Robert and Margaret, now in their 60s, had started thinking about what they'd do once their children left home. The idea of helping other kids in situations like their own children had faced was appealing. They had the experience, the resources, and most of all, the love to give. "Maybe we could start by taking in a child temporarily," Robert said. "See how we adjust." The first child to arrive was Sophia, a 9-year-old girl removed from a neglectful home. She was shy and wary, reminding them so much of Hope as a child. Ethan, now 16, naturally stepped into the role of protective big brother. He taught Sophia how to draw and care for the animals, helping her feel like part of the family. "It's strange being on the other side of things," Hope remarked during a phone call. "I remember how scary it was coming to a new home. But you also remember how good it felt to find people who truly cared," Tyler reminded her. The Johnson family's story had become legendary in the area, not because it was extraordinary or impossible, but precisely because it was deeply human and real. At her college graduation, Hope gave a speech about second chances and the transformative power of unconditional love. "8 years ago, I was a girl with no name, no family, no future," she told the audience. "Today, I'm Hope Johnson, a college graduate, a beloved daughter, a proud sister. I didn't change because I became someone different, but because I found people who saw who I really was beneath the fear and pain." Robert and Margaret watched from the crowd, tears in their eyes. Beside them, Tyler and Ethan cheered enthusiastically, proud of their big sister. Sophia, now officially adopted by the family, held Margaret's hand, her eyes shining with admiration. "Will I ever get to speak like that someday?" she whispered to Margaret. "If you want to, you will," her mother replied. "You can be anything you dream of." After graduation, Hope decided to return home to work for the local newspaper. She wanted to document stories like her own, to show that change and hope were possible even in the hardest circumstances. Her first major article was about the county's foster care system, highlighting its successes and challenges. The piece gained national attention, shining a light on the importance of keeping siblings together during adoption. "You're changing the world," Robert said proudly. "I'm changing my corner of it," Hope corrected, "just like you changed mine." The Johnson family kept growing. Tyler married a local veterinarian, and they had 2 children. Ethan became a renowned illustrator, specializing in books that help children process trauma. Sophia followed in Hope's footsteps, becoming a social worker dedicated to helping other vulnerable kids. Robert and Margaret, now grandparents, continued taking in children who needed temporary care. Their farm became a refuge known throughout the region. One Sunday afternoon, 20 years after that first meeting on the dirt road, the entire Johnson family gathered to celebrate Robert's birthday. Hope, now a respected journalist and mother of a young daughter, looked around the table. There were so many people there, biological and adopted children, grandchildren, friends who had become family. "Remember when you asked me what name I wanted to have?" she said to Robert. "I do. You chose Hope. Today I understand why that name always felt right. Not because I had hope of finding a family, but because I was hope. Hope that children like me could have a happy ending. Hope that love can heal any wound. Hope that family is something you build, not something that just happens." Robert smiled, his eyes shining. "And you brought hope to us too. You showed it's never too late to make a family, never too late to change someone's life." Hope's little daughter, Margaret, named after her grandmother, climbed onto her great-grandfather's lap. "Grandpa Rob, tell the story about when you found Mommy on the road." "Again?" Robert laughed. "I've told that story 1,000 times. But I love it. It's my favorite story." And Robert began to tell once more the story of how a nameless girl and her siblings were found by the side of a dirt road, and how love turned them all into a family. The story that had begun with abandonment and fear was now a legend of love and hope, passed down through generations, proving that sometimes the happiest endings come from the hardest beginnings. As she listened to her grandfather tell her own story, Hope held Margaret's hand and smiled. She had found far more than a family. She had found her place in the world, her identity, her purpose. And it had all started that day when a farmer in a straw hat stopped to help 3 lost children on the road. A moment that changed not only their lives, but the lives of everyone they touched over the years. The nameless girl had become Hope Johnson, and her story continued to inspire others to believe that transformation is always possible when we find people willing to love unconditionally. The end Hope proved that even from the darkest moments, we can find our light and our place in the world. Now tell us, which moment of this journey touched your heart the most? Do you believe love can truly transform lives as it did for this family? We'd love to read your heartfelt thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us on this moving story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more narratives that celebrate the power of hope and family love.